Hello everyone, and welcome to the Campfire. It's a pleasure to meet you. I am still a Brightblade, a knight that's possessed by the quill pen here on my head. You can also refer to me as Kogasa Gasa 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 Gasa, or just Koga if that's a little bit too difficult. Today, we'll be going over the process of creating a character in Nechronica, a tabletop role-playing game from Japan. This is just a really basic video without going into depths like character optimization or interactions, with the goal of helping you set up your first character, your very own dough. A dough is like a specialized undead war machine created by a necromancer, made with free will. Depending on necromancer that created you, you can be anything between a beloved toy to something to fulfill necromancer's sadistic needs. Most dolls appear to be young girls because of a necromancer's wishes, but that's not a strict rule depending on necromancers. As for necromancers, they are your game masters for other tabletop role-playing games. Unlike other TRPGs, your necromancer is also the character in the world of Nechronica. Many Nechronica campaigns have the dolls win their eventual freedom by slaying their necromancer, while other dolls collaborate with the necromancers in a variety of ways. Necromancers usually don't create a singular doll, and instead create a group of them. The other players' dolls are referred to as your sisters. Before we begin, you should take a look at the Nechronica Wiki link below or over at nechronica.mirahise.org. It's a great resource, and you can follow along the video on the doll creation page. You can record your dolls however you like, and I often just use Notepad. There's also the character sheet provided by Furosindra's over at twitch.tv/Furosindra's, modified a little bit by me. Now you can clone off Google Drive. Links provided below as well, and we'll be using that for this video. This one here. Oh, I'll also be using the term you to refer to you or your character, the dough. Once you're ready, let's proceed. First, we have fragment of memory. I usually call them memory fragments, so consider an interchangeable term. Memory fragments are precious fragments of your doll's memory from back when you were alive. You get 2 of those when you are freshly created, and you can either roll 2d100 to determine them, or you can pick whichever you prefer. Japanese tabletop role-playing games tend to use a good amount of those tables, called roll choice tables, and we have it right here. As you can see, there's literally 100 of them, so pick whichever ones that you feel like. Depending on your necromancer, you might be able to customize your own memory fragments. You might also gain additional memory fragments during the course of the game, up to 6. Memory fragments are mostly for roleplay purposes, but they can also occasionally come to play. The amount of memory fragments you possess also dictates how many madness points you can remove per adventure or combat phase. Generally, don't worry too much and just pick whichever ones you like. For now, we'll have Secret and Medicine, number 82 and 93 for although. Just go to fragment, secret, and we'll just paste it here, and medicine. Next is premonitions. If your memory fragments are pieces of concrete memories of your past, then your premonition is the central thing of those memories, a link that ties those loose pieces together. With that said, premonition really doesn't count much during play. To determine your premonition, either roll 1d10 and refer to the premonition table here, or just pick ones that you like. For example, here we'll have number 3, Trap. So we'll record it down here. Now we get to pick position and classes for our doll here. First, position. Position is your personality and how you operate in your group of sisters. For example, an Alice is a warm girl that inspires her sisters, while a Junk is a doll that has went through a lot of challenges and lost many things, but is determined to cling on to what's important. Each of the positions provide a number of skills to choose from. You'll have one skill from your position once you decide your position and classes, so keep that in mind. It's good to discuss with the other players so you don't have too much overlap, but if we are completely honest here, you can have 4 holics or whatever in the group and still make it work. Second is classes. Your classes are how your necromancer has decided to shape and outfit you. For example, you might be made with Ranger Combat in mind and has class of Recreant, or the Necromancer might decide to jam Mutation to you, giving you class of Baroque. You choose 2 classes here, one being your main class and one being your subclass. You get 2 skills from your main class and 1 from your subclass. You can have the same class for your main and subclasses, which will let you pick the class special skill to signify your specialization. For example, Baroque here will have a special skill of Mutated Being. You can only pick Mutated Being if you are main class and subclass of Baroque. More on that later. You'll also receive a number of reinforcement points which you can play later. For the time being, just note it down on your sheet. For our example here, we'll make her with position of Court. Sure. For the main class, we'll make her a Gothic. And for the subclass, we'll make it Recreant. Gothic gives reinforcement point of 1 in mutation and 1 in enhancement, while Recreant gives 2 in armament. So for the total, we'll have 2 armament, 1 mutation, and 1 enhancement point. Now, skills. Skills are part of your innate abilities, something deep within your heart that nothing can really take away. Your guns can break, your swords can shatter, and even your arms, legs, even head can be sliced off. But you'll always have your skills. As mentioned before, we'll be picking 1 skill for your position, 2 skills for your main class, and 1 skill for your subclass. Read through your position and classes again and think about how you want to make your dough. There's a bunch of terminology that might be hard to understand at first, so you might have to do some sleuthing on the wiki. Feel free to pause this video, I'll wait for you. As for our example though here, we'll go ahead and pick Anticipate skill for Core. And go to Anticipate. Anticipate skill have a timing of rapid, cost of 0, the cost here being action point, or the amount of action point required to activate the skill. Range here 0 to 3. And the effect here, we'll just copy it right up here. For Gothic, we'll pick 2 skills. We can pick Veracity, because that's a special skill, and our main and subclass do not match. Instead, we'll take Vile Repass and Delaying Corruption. It have timing of damage, cost of 0, range of self, and Vile Repass. For Recreant, our subclass will take Handle Death. Now, remember the reinforcement points we have from earlier. With those reinforcement points, we'll be able to get reinforcement parts. First of all, add 1 reinforcement point to a category of your choice. Most those, unless they are psychedelic, will have 5 reinforcement points at this point. Psychedelic will have just a little bit less. In our case, we'll add 1 point to armament, bumping that up to 3. So we have 3 armament, 1 mutation, and 1 enhancement point. Now, we'll get some reinforcement parts on our dough. Reinforcement parts are different from your basic parts, which are things like arms, legs, entrails, brain, and such. So stuff like these are your basic parts. There are 3 categories to your reinforcement parts. First category is armament. Armament are generally objects that are part of your loadout, like grenades, guns, first aid kit, or even your very own coffin. Second is mutation. Mutation parts are literally mutations, biological modifications with a variety of functions, from growing a pair of horns on your head to having extra set of legs. Lastly is enhancement. Enhancements are somewhere in between, and usually are a bit more supportive in nature, but not always. Enhancements include anything from lightsabers to having bones of steel. Reinforcement parts come in 3 tiers as well, with tier 1 generally being weaker than tier 2, and tier 2 generally being weaker than tier 3. To obtain reinforcement parts, we will refer to the amount of points you have in each category. If you have 1 point in a category, you can obtain a tier 1 part in that category. If you have 2, you can obtain a tier 1 and a tier 2 part. For 3 points, you can get a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3 part. Starting from 4 points, things change a bit. You get 2 tier 1 parts of the category, 1 tier 2 and 1 tier 3. Essentially, you quotation mark count upward starting from tier 1. If you somehow have 7 points in armament, for example, which is impossible during character creation, you will go tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, going back to Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and going back to Tier 1. We count Tier 1 3 times, Tier 2 twice, and Tier 3 twice. So you have 3 Tier 1 armament, 2 Tier 2 armaments, and 2 Tier 3 armaments, for our example. You can always choose a lower tier if you wish. For example, instead of picking a Tier 3 part, you can pick a Tier 1 or Tier 2 part of the same category instead. Well, that was complicated. Let's put that into practice. Our example here has 3 armament, 1 mutation, and 1 enhancement point. So we'll count 3 for armament. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. So we have an armament of each tier. And we'll count to 1 for mutation. Tier 1. So we have a single Tier 1 mutation. Since it was enhancement, so we have a single Tier 1 enhancement as well. For the armament, we'll pick Kung Fu, Barbed Wire, and Giant Scissors. For mutation, we'll take Heart. For enhancement, let's take Steel Bones. You'll notice that some parts have the word any in them. Like this one here. While others specify a body location. Like Steel Bones here. For ones that specify a body location, it can only go there. For example, you can only have your Kung Fu knowledge in your head. Now for Kung Fu will have to go to the head. Kung Fu, Barbed Wire, Giant Scissors. For the mutation, we have Heart. Lastly, Steel Bones. There's a whole ton of reinforcement parts, so honestly, take your time to pick whatever you like. For newbies, the general advice is to take a part that can do something during combat, hopefully with some sort of damage, as well as take things that give you additional action points, like Kung Fu and Heart. Your skills might also influence what you are looking for in your reinforcement parts. In our example here, we took Fire Repast, which makes dismember attacks we deliver harder to resist. On top of that, we took Giant Scissors for our Tier 3 armament, which dismembers and also make dismember checks harder for the enemy, and that stacks together. Dismember attacks have 2 weaknesses usually. The first one being that it only works on enemies with body part locations, or, savants. Second is that it's entirely defended against, and the damage is reduced to 0. They ignore the dismember effect. That's why we have Barbed Wire, which in conjunction with Anticipate and Handle Death can force through the opponent's defenses easier. We could also just take Shovel, which dismembers less often, but damage it deals ignore defenses, but that's less fun. Anyway, let's move on. Treasures. Each door will start with a piece of treasure. It is something like treasure. It's a trinket that keeps you calm, keeps you sane, and keeps you, you. It can be anything from the photograph to even a small undead pet. It's a part, but it's neither basic or reinforcement part. Even worse is the fact that your treasure can break during combat. If your treasure is broken, it's gone forever. Unlike your arms and legs, which you can regrow, and your guns and batteries, which you can replace, your treasures are unique and irreplaceable. Treasures have a special effect, which reduces your madness point at the end of combat. More on that later. And of course, you can obtain additional treasures during the course of play if your necromancer is kind. You can design your own treasure, or just roll on the table if you aren't sure. As for us, we'll go with, I guess, a hat. Yeah, we'll get a hat as our treasure for our example. We're also adding just a little bit of flavor text here for fun. And here we are. Next is maximum action points. Maximum action point is pretty straightforward. You start out with 6 maximum action points, and the base parts you start out with, the eyeballs and brain, gives additional 3 points. So you'll start with 9 maximum AP if you don't have any other parts that add to your action points. In our example, we have Kung Fu and Heart, which gives 1 point each, so our example here will have 11 max AP to start. Maximum AP is both your speed as well as a resource, At the start of each combat round, you receive a number of AP equal to your max AP, and the character with the highest AP goes first. And obviously, if you have more AP, you have more AP to spend. If all goes well, I'll make another video on how combat works, but for the time being, let's move on. Initial deployment determines where you start in combat. You can pick 3 out of 5 locations, which represents the combat map. The combat map will go from Eden, Elysium, Limbo, Hades to Tartarus, with Eden representing a safe area away from threats and Tartarus representing the depths of enemy ranks, usually. Since we have a single melee weapon, and we don't really have any good movement options, we want to be as close as possible to the enemies. So let's start at Limbo. Next is name and age. Name is your name. It can be a nickname, a call sign, a number, or just some name you feel like having. Your necromancer might have given you a name, or you might remember your name from your past memories. That's up to you. Anyways, we'll call our example here Soul Chang. After Soul takes the key from Rose Maiden due to the giant scissors. As for age is just a number, especially since it's your physical age when your body died. You could be 80 years old hag inside a little girl's body if you want. In fact, that's often really fun. I recommend. There's also no guarantee like your body is your body, or like your memories are your memories. Necromancers sometimes do strange things like sewing people's bodies and memories together, like some jigsaw puzzle. So yeah, just don't worry about it too much. Last but not least, fetters. You want to do fetters with the rest of your sisters, because fetters are your links to things that you hold dear. They represent the feelings you have toward people and things, whether positive or negative, and they keep you going. Without any feathers, you will either be akin to a savant with no free will of your own, nothing more than a robot, or even worse, mentally broken beyond repair, catatonic. Everyone has a feather dependent upon treasure. In addition to that, for each one of your sister, you'll receive a feather to wear them. You can determine the feathers by rolling on the table, or choosing ones that you think you will feel to wear that person. Write those feathers down. Feelings are volatile, and how you view your sisters may change during the game. If you had a case of miscommunication, your feeling toward your sisters might get twisted. Your feathers are always 3 mana points out of 4. A newly created though is often still unsure of their feelings, and stressful situation can cause their heart to break and feelings to go into overdrive. Upon receiving madness point to wear the feather and filling out the madness tracker for that particular feather, the madness of that emotion manifests itself. For example, if you feel protective of someone, that feeling might cause you to have a need to stay close to them. Once you fill in your feathers, you are done and ready to play. Welcome to Nechronica. Remember, have fun and stay safe out there, everyone.